and I would love to hear your comments on this. And this is what I love. I love you, Audrey, because you follow that question up by saying, however, no matter what, I continue to listen to the Circle of 12. I just love Cryon, Lee, Monica, and all the members. Oh my gosh, Audrey, we just love you for your energy and your delightfulness, and nearly 80 years old and doing all of this. How amazing you are. What an inspiration.
Audrey has been saying it would seem like nothing has changed. I want to talk especially to seniors and those who are in their 80s or beyond. And I'm going to give you a statement that Cryon has given. You don't know what hasn't happened. I want you to think about this. So you may have aches and pains, and you still have aches and pains, and you get up and you're in the Circle of 12 and you still have aches and pains. You don't know what hasn't happened. Maybe you've received a healing that's going to extend your life with aches and pains of age. It's possible. Don't send me letters, folks. I mean, you say, well, you ought to be able to cure everything. When you're 88 and you're in these situations, you don't know what hasn't happened. Cryon has given this information. Don't assume you think you know what healing has happened when you've had a life extension. And yes, sometimes age simply does come with creaks and these kinds of aches and pains. But God bless you for being there, for being the age you are, for being with us. And I hope you take this to heart, because I think there has been a healing in your life, and perhaps it's been one of those invisible ones. Again, you don't know what hasn't happened.
Beautiful answer, Lee. And let's move into a meditation and a channeling from Cryon. And this meditation, it's simply a pause and a stop, a preparation to receive the energy of Cryon, the loving messages of Cryon. And in this preparation, you may even wish to close your eyes. You may even wish to place a hand on your heart. And you may even wish to acknowledge that the true nature of who you are is eternal. That means that you have had no beginning and you never end. We get to spend time on this beautiful planet in the bodies that we're in. It's a temple and a vessel that holds our eternalness. And so we just give gratitude and thanks for this moment where we are able to experience the contrast of our eternal nature within a vessel that has a finite experience. And you may wish to take a deep breath and then just relax further into the chair. You can place your hands on your lap if you've had them on your heart. And we welcome in the beautiful energy and message from Cryon.
Greetings, dear ones. I am Cryon of Magnetic Service. This month has a theme. We have been giving every single month a theme of 4 messages. And this is no different. The first week of the month, we told you what the theme would be, and we continue it even today. Dear ones, changes are afoot. And what this truly means is change is that which is, I would say, I would indicate more than not what you're going to experience in this new energy. That is perhaps the biggest element that you could say, well, what was then and what was now, what has happened before, what has happened after COVID, it's change. And there are 4 profound changes that I wish to talk about. I talked about one already, and today is going to be another. There are all manner of things that you could say the new energy is bringing you. You could say, well, I think the biggest thing is the new light. I think the other thing is the way that institutions are changing, or this or that, or what COVID has done or does not. But I'm telling you, the biggest thing, change. Changes that you did not expect. Now that's the big one. And so we're going to posture this with a little bit of research, a little science, actually. Have you ever noticed something? That history tends to repeat itself. If you go back, if you're a historian, you can see this. It is so profound that it just seems like there is a dysfunction in humanity. It seems like generation after generation, the same mistakes keep being made. You'll get through one war, you'll take a break, and you'll get right back into it, perhaps for the same countries, for the same reasons, perhaps even in the same location. This has been the way history has happened. And it doesn't matter whether it's ancient history or it is absolutely current. Doesn't it seem to you like when you look at history that the elements that would create argument, the elements that would create hatred or fear, seem to pop up over and over? Generation after generation, it's almost like one generation accomplished something and they said, this is done, I'm glad it's over, and the next generation then rekindles it. And here it comes again. This is so profoundly true as you look at it that you would ask, is there any science behind it? It's the scientist Greg Braden who put this together and started looking at it and asking, is there a cycle and perhaps a reason for this? Indeed, the research shows that there is a cycle. The research shows that there's even a definition of how long that cycle actually could be. You didn't expect science around history repeating itself, did you? But it does. So let me put it in a way that's a bit different than the scientist Greg put it, and make it simplified. Pretend for a moment there's levels of awareness and energy on this planet. And for eons, you have been at a level and an energy that had a definition because of the vibration it was at. Let's say the vibration is X, a number X. And X gives you cycles. And those cycles have numbers and years. And as long as you're in the energy of X, those things continue to repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. And we have told you so many times that you have been stuck in an old energy. As long as you can remember, as long as you can look at your history books, it just seemed that energy, that low energy was there. Suddenly, we've told you a new energy is here, is coming, is being developed, is evolving. Let's call it X plus 1. It's a new energy. It's not necessarily Y yet, but it's X plus 1. It means it's starting to evolve. Question for you, if you've been listening. If you're in X plus 1, will the same cycles then repeat? Or would it be a new energy enough so that you're on like another track? I want you to see and envision something. You're on a train and it's on a track that it's always been on. It goes in a circle. That circle is your history, and it tends to repeat itself over and over and over for hundreds of years. You go to a situation, and suddenly you see another track available that is an off-siding, an offshoot. It's a switchable place where you could go to another circle. And that other circle, indeed, it's still a circle, is just on another level, up higher. The switch is thrown, the train goes then up a little hill, and now it's on another circle. That's x plus 1. But in that new circle, there's no history. Are you seeing? You've never been around that circle. Oh, it's a long one. Maybe it lasts 50 years. Maybe it lasts a generation or more only. Maybe it lasts 100. But as the train goes up and goes to that level and then is on that circle, it's on virgin track. It's never had a history before. It's making new rules. It's making new assumptions. It is an elevated track then, is it not? X plus 1 is where you are. You've changed tracks, dear ones, and so here is the premise of the change. I want to give it to you now. I hope some of you write it down. Do not expect what's happened in the past to be the model of what's going to happen in the future. History will not necessarily repeat itself because you're in X plus 1. You're in that elevated track where there is no history to repeat. It's like you're riding the first time around the track right now. This is what the scientist Greg Braden presented and showed you very profoundly in his work. And he would be the first one to agree that if you change tracks, there's no history to repeat. And that is the essence also of his work and his book and the solutions that he came with as well. Change tracks. What does this mean for you personally? Let's talk about some of these things. It's not just history that you've changed. It's the way you act. What do you expect next? If you've been around many people and they're talking about, for instance, coming out of COVID, or what's next for the planet now that things have changed this way, what kind of things do you hear? Well, there are those who say, well, we're supposed to be in the new normal. But I'm not seeing it. You know, don't you, that the government will never change? It's the government, you know. People are not going to change. You know, they're people. We've got race problems. That's not going to change. It never has. It's just going to settle down. Nothing's going to be accomplished. Over here, the crime over here, it's just going to return. You've heard that over and over, dear ones, because that's how humans think. They get together and they discuss what's wrong with the planet, and they've decided everything is wrong with the planet. And if anyone has hope, they'll tell them it's only hope for a moment, and it's going to return to the old track it used to be on. You know I'm right. What do you do when your friends sit around and discuss how everything is going to return to where it was, and the corruption is never going to get better, and the greed is never going to get better, and the humans never get better, and you can just expect the worst? What do you do? Well, the first thing we have discussed even before is don't join in. Now, you can listen if you wish to. You don't have to walk out. But if they turn to you and ask, you can say, well, I think there's more hope than there has been in the past. That's what's happening in my life anyway. You don't make them wrong. You show them light. You don't have to say what I'm going to tell you, but you can know this. And those old souls right now who are feeling it are saying, yes, yes, we're feeling that we're on this new track. There is a new energy here. X plus 1 is starting on this planet. You are not going to experience in the future what you experienced in the past. There's no rule that says it's going to go back to the way it was. There just isn't. Where is it going then? And this is where you can say, I don't know. But I know that right now we have an opportunity to take it where it's never been before, to make changes that stick, to say things we want collectively for them to be a certain way, and that sticks, and it doesn't have to return to the way it was. Oh, there's more, dear ones. I'll give you one the next time we're together. It's a big one. But the lesson of this day, this change, you're on a new track. Do not expect what's happened in the past to be your future. Can you go there with me? Can you understand this? I hope so, old soul, because that is your lineage, and that is why you're here, to see it and to make the change. I am Cryon, in love with humanity. And so it is.
And let the energy of that beautiful message really sink into the cells of your body, that the past doesn't dictate the future. Let's really cognize that whatever has happened in your past, you can let that all go, because you have the most amazing future coming your way. And we have a special guest joining us today who is the example of that exact thing, where she had things in her past that she was able to change very quickly and create a whole new future, not only for herself, but for many other patients that she has worked with. And so, Lee, we are really both excited that we have Dr. Kim D'Ermo joining us. And I just want to check, Kim, are you there?
I am here.
Fabulous. Well, we want to tell everyone about you.
Dr. Kim D'Ermo, this is one of the things that I just love. There's a term we call conscious physician, and then you're going to hear what that means now if you're not really aware of it. Best-selling author of The Mind-Body Toolkit and founder of the American Institute of Mind-Body Medicine. She assists clients all over the world to tap into their body's wisdom and reverse pain, fatigue, anxiety, and end disease.
Now, Kim knew at a young age that she was here to be a doctor, and she was here to share her awareness that our thoughts create reality. Our emotions directly affect our cells, and that our bodies can heal from within. So she later attended osteopathic medical school and then went on to become a board-certified emergency medicine physician.
So as a doctor who was highly empathic and energy sensitive, it was easy for her to tune in and quickly see exactly what was limiting her patient's health and keeping the disease in place. I'd like to say that about 3 times, because this is exactly what we teach, and there are things keeping the disease in place. And there in the ER and all of that, I'm quite sure she was looking at that on a regular basis, because she goes on to say, working in the emergency room for years, she was amazed at how universal this process was. As a mind-body medicine physician, she has now created a career centered around the body's wisdom, not centered around the disease.
Oh, I absolutely love that. Now, Dr. Kim has assisted thousands of patients using mind-body medicine to resolve issues such as chronic fatigue, autoimmune illness, chronic pain, fibromyalgia, anxiety, cancer, food intolerance, migraine headaches, and so much more.
This is the kind of doctor I want to find. I would actually have searched for this kind of a doctor even in my area, just to go for checkups and things like that. And here we have one right with us. Dr. Kim, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a beautiful moment for me, too.
Oh, well, we are so delighted. And Kim, I want to hear your story.
Yeah.
And you are rare, because sounds like at a young age you were already consciously aware of how we create our reality.
Well, I had an awakening experience really early on. I grew up in the Boston area, and my sort of foundation was in like a Catholic, not super religious, but Catholic upbringing, and what you see is what you get. It wasn't super spiritually connected necessarily. My grandfather was a doctor, and it was sort of that old school thought that you listen to the doctor, you do what they tell you, don't ask too many questions, maybe. And certainly really grounded in the physical reality being the only reality considered. And, I'd always been very, very sensitive and empathic. I mean, of course, I didn't have that word at the time to even know what that was. I just thought something was wrong with me. And I understood I didn't really operate and function the way everyone around me seemed to. And tried to just stay under the radar with what the insight was, and that the mind is creative, that we're actively part of everything around us, where we're creating our reality. Thoughts are things. But at the time, that was a little bit crazy. So, I had an anxiety disorder. I was medicated. I had a lot of depression. I didn't really understand how I fit in. So I tried harder and harder and harder. And it was really clear when I, like at about age 16, smoked marijuana with my boyfriend and had like the roof came off the top kind of thing. Like all of, the veil was taken away, so to speak. I could actively feel my life getting created in front of me as a reflection of my thoughts, as a reflection of my intention. And I had no practice with this at all. So it was really, really chaotic, that the buffer was sort of released, and now it was like instant manifestation. And I would just say it was a really destabilizing experience. And it did look really crazy to everyone around me, So of course they brought me to the emergency room. This woman's talking out of her head. My boyfriend, interestingly, really got it, because he was a really spiritual guy and understood I was connecting with something deeper. But in the midst of all of this, it was really hard for me to put together what happened. And it took years to really integrate the wisdom and the clarity that came in, because once you have that experience of like the veil being released, you can't ever really go back inside the box. You can't ever really see the world as flat, so to speak, or that the physical is all there is and we're separate and disconnected. And so that wasn't going to work for me. But I also knew I didn't have anybody in my world that I knew of that I could speak to about it. So I just tried really hard to comply, if you could call it that, and just fly under the radar until I could get to like be a responsible adult and like find someone who was also of that awareness, who could really speak my language and really understand what I knew and what I saw and the insight I had. So with that insight came the awareness of what's currently happening in our world and in our medical system specifically, with so many people not understanding that we're connected with our body, that our body is directly responding to our mind and to our beliefs and to our even just the fear, everything that's coming up. And that illness, very specifically, like chronic illnesses that aren't getting better, were a response to this deeper inner world and the inner fear, or the inner, we buy into lack, or we think I'm separate, or I'm my body, and we go into survival and tighten, we don't even breathe, and that the body couldn't be in harmony and health when we're in that belief system and that perspective. So with this sort of download came the awareness that I was here to be a part of that, a part of the awakening in the world, and specifically in our way of looking at health and looking at disease, and how the medical system is set up in a big misunderstanding. So, of course, it made no sense to me how that was going to happen. I'm like, I'm a kid. Do I even know what I'm doing? But it changed my whole life, because I really felt like I had a calling and a purpose and a very, very deep connection with the wisdom in me. And that certainly brought me through the next several years of my life to find my way to now having created a platform to share this from a much bigger space.
So at the beginning, I was telling everyone how you really did change your past and create a whole new future. And what I was referring to was the fact that you had an autoimmune illness and you reversed the symptoms in 10 days. I just love that, and I want to know more.
What's the timeline of that? Was that before you became a physician or during that?
This was during medical school. And I also want to say that 10 days kind of can get a little glitchy because people expect it for themselves to be 10 days. But for me, it was like, call it 10 years and 10 days, right? Yeah. Because the shifting did happen in a very quick time, but it was from that onset of understanding, whoa, I'm not just a physical body. There's more to the picture. I'm a connected whole. How do I navigate this? To like literally studying all kinds of different mentors and maybe some other doctors even, because Herbert Benson founded the Mind Body Institute at Harvard. And I'd listened to Joan Borisenko speak about mind body medicine. And I'd like grabbed onto all of this and read everything I could get my hands on for years and years and years and years. And then more like spiritual exploration of that awakening process. So this was all certainly the foundation of what allowed me to have a physical shift, the manifestation in such a short time. And I think it was sort of all part of my like cosmic education to, be sitting there in medical school learning about pathology all day long. And you're constantly telling your body, like, here's everything that can go wrong. Here's how it happens. And then my body would manifest that. I had like a heart murmur and heart palpitations, and they found something on the ultrasound going on with my heart. And then when we're studying like the GI system, it was like system after system after system. I didn't put it together until the GI system. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so constipated. So I call my mom because I tried everything and I'm like, Mom, something's wrong. I'm just not pooping. I'm so constipated. And she's the one who said, well, don't you have doctors there all day that you're learning from? Can't you ask one of them? Because we couldn't figure it out. And I said, oh my God, actually, we have a GI doctor this week because right now we're studying the GI system. And that's when I started to get a little suspicious, like my cells are listening to all this study about pathology, and they're responding to that. And we did get myself like handled with the acute issue, but it helped me understand like, well, there's really a deep connection, especially for me being like a highly sensitive, empathic kind of person, more like energy aware than maybe some people. I was more susceptible to that. So, it was later on, a couple of years later, where I had this like severe unrelenting fatigue, which they probably would have just said you have chronic fatigue syndrome, but that wasn't as prevalent in understanding at the time. So I saw doctor after doctor after doctor, and these like febrile, where I'd get like that malaise and kind of like you're getting sick, feverish yuckiness intermittently, and migraines, like a lot of weird things, and no one could figure it out. So of course I went from like doctor to doctor to doctor with, the full on work app, and no one could find out what was really happening. And I felt super lost because I understood the mind body connection. I understood mind over matter. I should heal myself. What am I doing wrong? And that was what I kind of kept asking is, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And I understand for so many people, it's like, no, there really is something wrong with me. Like I'm trying to verify it and validate it. There's something wrong. But I didn't understand that that was sort of the very thing that made it worse and worse and worse, where it was like the second year in, now it's more complicated with more symptoms. And now lab changes, they did find stuff on my labs, but no one could still figure out what's at the core of this. So it was finally after being given the diagnosis of you have blah, 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 autoimmune syndrome. It was a late onset juvenile rheumatoid, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, wait a minute, this is not my solution. You have to control your environment. You can't have these foods. You can't have these toxins around you. You can't have rugs. You have to have it controlled. You have to have all these medicines. And I thought, this is not my truth, because I understood that the body was reacting, like I'm overreacting. My immune system is reactive. But I thought, this isn't just a thing that like happens. A couple of years ago, I was around these same allergens and my body didn't react. So that's when I started to finally get a little insight, like, why is my body so reactive? And this was a little bit of an unlocking for me, because I started to see what's right about this I'm not getting, and actually ask my body, like, what do you need? Because if the body's wrong and I've got to fight it and I've got to fight my symptoms and suppress them, that's one paradigm, which I already understood was not the reality. But then how do I unlock the key for this understanding that my body does heal itself? It just isn't getting what it needs in order to do that, or it's getting overloaded with stuff that it doesn't need, so it's not doing that properly. And I think after that diagnosis was given is when I stopped asking that question and looking to that model, and finally asked, what's right about this I'm not getting, and looking to my wisdom. And that was when, the 10 days, it was very, very, once I tuned into my body was like, I've got you. If you're listening, we will talk. The wisdom rather is like, we will talk. And through that connection had just massive amount of insight. And I could literally feel myself clenching down, and literally feel that the severe pains and joint pains and arthritis that was developing was a direct response to my inner conversation.
Well, folks, if you're listening, I hope you are, we've gone through almost a year of Healing Wednesdays and
Yes.
people talking about this very, very thing. You now have a position talking about exactly this. We create so much. And I didn't mean to go to this area, but right away, I looked at COVID and saw the horror there, and then indeed a disease and many deaths and all. And I just wondered, what the press was doing to exacerbate this and making people sicker, because they're now fearing it and getting closer to it even.
Well, we've collectively, if you want to say, created this to let the fear, which has been, it seems like people are in fear. It's been a year. Oh, it's a year of fear. No, this fear has been there for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades. But it's been at this like really subtle level where most people were completely unaware of it. So they would just like pedal harder, run the rat race a little harder, suppress with a little more gusto, and like move on, and then live their life in this like everything's fine sort of superficial layer. And under the surface, the fear has been there. And what the fear is I'm powerless, right? The outer is the power. And what I'm just this physical thing, and I'm powerless. I'm separate. That like I'm a physical body. And so obviously our medical system sees it, you need a physical solution, right? Because people will say to me, well, if I have real disease, then this can't really apply to me, which is not true at all. So that's the second sort of lie, is like I'm a physical, separate, solid thing, which is not the truth. And will also always create fear and lack when we buy into that idea. So these sort of main things, I'm powerless, I'm physical, I'm limited, are a big foundational lie. And we cannot rise into the greatness of awakening we're here to have, and the prosperity on that foundation. So it sort of needs to fall away. Now you've either kind of like studied this for a long time and begun to understand like, whoa, I'm an infinite being having a physical experience, and you have maybe been a little more versed with that, in which case this fallout of the fear really, really surfacing may not be quite as challenging for you. Like you kind of have a little bit of awareness of, as within, so without, where's my true connection to source? Because everything out there is falling away, right? Maybe I lost my job. Maybe you have a diagnosis and you're like, I could die. And it calls you to potentially connect with something that is truly substantial.